Okay, we've got all 7 board members. I see Denise, Dr. Schutz, Robert. We'll go ahead and call this special called meeting December 13th, 2021 of the Smithville R2 School District to order. Looking at the agenda, we'll go ahead 6.0, approve the meeting agenda. Does anybody have any changes or additions that need to be made to the agenda? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
And then Denny, it's taken me a minute to load up ESB. You might have to give me a second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Let me know when you get it loaded, Ian.
Any, I haven't got on there yet. I'm working.
Yeah, Karen, will you send me the quick link? I went through, since it's not on my favorite, I went through our website to try to pull it, or if you could direct me on our website, that would work too.
Yeah, keep in mind that they changed links about 6 or 8 months ago. So if you had it as a favorite,
Okay.
I just use the email they send us every month. Click on that link.
Which one did it come in, Sarah? Sorry, guys.
It came from Karen, I think on Friday. Maybe Thursday. Karen, you might remember better.
Hold on.
Oh, I see it. I got it, Karen. Thank you,
Okay.
Sarah.
Mhm.
Problem is, let's see. Oh boy, this could be.
1, 2, 3, remember? Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Karen, I'm in. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Please vote.
Do you want me to do a roll call or are we voting with electronic school board?
We just voted with electronic school board, Karen.
Okay.
If everybody's in. Scott, do you have ESB open?
I do, but it's not coming up, letting me vote. There he is.
Okay, motion passes. Move on to 7.0. 7.1, consider district masking practices. Dr. Sheets.
There we go, unmuted. First of all, I want to make everyone aware, the public aware, that it's well documented that the Smithville School District has received a couple of communications from the Attorney General's office, most recently a cease and desist order. And the Board of Education met with their legal counsel previous to this open session. And so all of that information has been well discussed and sorted through and will be taken into consideration from this board moving forward. So what I want to do this evening at this point in time is to go through with the board what my recommendation is moving forward. And then Denise Harwood then will take the board through what the plan would look like, the return to learn plan would look like, reflecting those changes. Certainly welcome the board's feedback, input, where you would like to see some tweaks and what additional work needs to be done. But I'll present to you where we are at this point in time as the administration. So first of all, from my perspective, as I look at this, with the exception of preschool students, all of our students and all of our staff have had the opportunity to get fully vaccinated. And we do estimate about 60% of our high school staff, or high school students rather, are fully vaccinated. And those numbers, we continue to work with and try to get a better handle on, but that's an estimate at this point in time. We do know that Blue Springs, Ray-Pac, Belton have not been masked in the Northland or so far this school year. Ray-Pac started masked. And the Northland districts, we know, are moving towards masks recommended after Christmas. So that's kind of what's going on around us in the metro. I'm sure we could throw in another district here and there that has a development, but those are the ones that come to the top of my mind. I too am recommending that we move to masks recommended after Christmas. This is it begs that I explain that for families that may not be comfortable with that, should the board approve that direction and they want to go to an online learning option, that they would need to get with their school's principal, and they can guide them through that process. So we that's where we're at in terms of masking. I'm recommending that we remove, not that we remove, that masks become recommended after Christmas break. Quarantines is the next big question in that discussion. So what are we going to do with that? So the school district, and really all school districts, have been miniature health departments for 18 months. We have been sorting through all of the data. We've been the judge, if you will, the jury, and making all of these determinations and what needs to take place for students in quarantine or not in quarantine. Of course, following the judgment and following the guidance, coming from our county. That's become very, very challenging on our staff. We've done our very, very best, and we worked very hard try to provide the healthiest, safest environment for our students and staff, and ultimately to keep kids in school. But this has been very, very difficult to sustain. So there are districts around us that are turning the quarantine duties over to the county. We would like to join in that effort. And Denise has been working with Clay County and kind of sorting through that and what that would look like for us. So we want to turn over those quarantining duties to the county, and the contact tracing and so on and so forth. So we'll still partner with them. We'll still work with them. We'll still make them aware of positive cases. We have to focus on what we've always focused on in terms of health in our school district, and that is if someone is sick, they need to be excluded from our environment. So for I don't know how long, decades, who knows how long, if you have a fever, you're not allowed to come to school for a period of time. With COVID though present, if you are positive COVID, we're suggesting that you need to be excluded from the environment for 10 days. We know that it's COVID, so you need to be excluded for 10 days. If you are a close contact to someone with COVID and you have symptoms, we're going to impose an exclusion for that child as well until the symptoms are no longer present. So we're not going to ignore obviously COVID, and we're not going to ignore symptoms. We still need to address those, but we're going to deal with it from where we can best control it, and that is in our schools with our nurses when someone is sick or exposed and has symptoms. So that's where we're headed at this point with quarantines. Again, we'll still partner with the health department, and but we're going to treat sick people like we always have, and work with them and try to get them healthy and minimize their symptoms and get them back in school. Along with that, masks on buses is still a federal mandate, and that would be included in this plan. We do not have the option if we, if we want to continue to accept federal dollars. We are required to follow this federal mandate to require masks on buses, and I believe that mandate goes through March at this point in time. This is the same mandate that requires you to wear a mask when you get on an airplane. In that mandate, in those orders, it includes public transportation, school buses, and so on and so forth. So we do not have the option to ignore that rule unless we want to risk forfeiting federal dollars. So that's kind of where I'm at this point as a superintendent. And then I'm going to turn it over to Denise to fill in some blanks there and provide some details as to what that looks like in a plan, and I'll mute.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Can you see it? Okay. So with this, we're going to start talking about what it looks like for students and staff who are symptomatic. Dr. Schutz, he alluded to this already. Students and staff showing symptoms associated with COVID-19 or who have tested positive will be excluded from district premises and activities. And they can contact their physician at that point. We have to talk about those symptoms. So what do those symptoms look like? We ask about being symptomatic. We are going to be consistent with what those major and minor symptoms are. So a major symptom would be a new cough, difficulty breathing, loss of taste and smell, or a fever in adults. Minor symptoms would be a headache, muscle aches, nausea, vomiting, a new runny nose or congestion. We keep hearing about allergies, so this would be a new runny nose or congestion, difficulty breathing, sore throat, or a fever greater than 100.4. Those symptoms, if you had 2 or more of those minor symptoms or one major symptom, that would exclude you from school as well. Students or staff who have the symptoms must be symptom-free for 24 hours before returning. So instead of having to test to return, you would just have to be symptom-free to return. But anyone who tests positive has to wait the 10 days like they always have. You have a 10-day isolation period. I want to go into activities because that's been very important to us. So students who have tested positive for COVID-19, again, will be excluded from participation for 10 days. If they're asymptomatic after 10 days, then they have to be released by their physician for the return to play stages. That's consistent with what we've had to do before. Students and staff who are close contacts or are liable to transmit the disease, if they are identified as a close contact, they will not need to be excluded from school if they are without symptoms or fully vaccinated or previously had COVID in the last 3 months. We will work with the Clay County Health Department for the contact tracing at this point. We will turn it over to them. We will still work to identify anyone close just so we can communicate with our families so they can be alert and look for symptoms. The only time a student or a staff member would be excluded from school if they were exposed is if they have symptoms. So again, at that point, if they're showing symptoms associated with COVID, then they would be excluded from school or work until they're symptom-free for 24 hours. Students showing symptoms at school will call home. We ask that you come get your student just like you always have within 30 minutes, and a staff member will be sent home immediately. Now, there are cases that we've had outbreaks where there's multiple cases in the classroom. We will still collaborate with the Clay County Public Health Center and allow them to do their job as epidemiologists to help us decide if there's something more we need to do. This could result in an exclusion from school depending on the severity of the outbreak. And if I go down through the document, I'll show you a board policy in a minute that will refer to that. We'll still monitor the number of positive cases occurring within the school environment, and we'll post those weekly on the dashboard. And we'll still review this plan monthly since we need to do that for our safe return to school anyway. we'll review, we'll give a COVID update and an opportunity to review our plan. I'm going to bypass this real quick. Policy EBB is about communicable diseases. This is the policy that we currently have already. We use it if there's a chickenpox outbreak, maybe whooping cough, whatever it may be. It states that we will work with our local health department for outbreak control. And so that's posted in the policy. So that gives us the guidance to use that. So again, any rules distributed by those to follow, we will follow per our policy. Sorry about the scrolling, if we would choose to do this, to give you a summary, effective whatever date, masks will no longer be required within the school setting for students and staff in instances when social distancing cannot be maintained. Masks will be recommended rather than required, particularly for those who are not vaccinated. Masks will still be required on the school bus as required by federal order through March 18th. And students and staff should maintain a social distance whenever possible, wash hands frequently, and stay home when they're sick. These are mitigation measures. We still have to have mitigation measures in place to keep our kids healthy. And then it says also effective on that day, students and staff members who are identified as a close contact will no longer be required to quarantine in most instances, and that would be when they're not showing symptoms. So that is the plan that we have written out before you. Another idea, I will scroll down, would be also the gating criteria. I know was put out before you. I did want to put the percentages out there so you could see what it would look like at different levels, just in case there were any questions about that. I tried to go back and look through the most number of the positive cases. I believe that was 12 in one setting. So you could see that took us up right under 3% in some schools. So that's a lot of information to digest. I wanted to give Robert Hedgeworth an opportunity if he wanted to say anything else about the transportation.
Thanks, Denise. Yeah, I just want to mention that that federal order still is in place till March 18th, 2022. The CDC will continue to review and revise that, but at this time, I believe, as is Dr. Schutt's recommendation, that we need to continue to follow that order to ensure that we don't have any other consequences that may affect the district. So.
Any questions from what I shared?
Yeah, one of the things we've heard frequently is regarding Michigan's quarantine policy. Is it my understanding that there's been a change there that would help us as we look to cut down on the number of quarantines we're currently looking at?
That is correct. They have changed it, allowing schools to set their own, or basically if students will follow what the school has in place. And as long as athletes are isolating for 10 days if they're positive and following the return to play procedures.
Any other questions or comments for Denise, Robert, or Dr. Schutz?
Just one quick comment. I think in order for this to work, starting in January, we are going to need to be able to trust our families to keep their kids home if they're sick or if they think they might be sick. We can't, we're letting up on our guidelines quite a bit. We got to be able to trust each other and that we're going to do the right thing for our family and for our school district.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, we've been presented with the plan. Dr. Schutz, do you want to identify a date that this plan would become effective, or if you haven't already?
Yeah, effective January 4th. first day back with all of our students.
Okay, so the current plan would remain in effect for the rest of this week, Friday being the last day before the holiday break.
Correct.
Dr. Schutz, can you tell us which schools are in which condition according to gating criteria?
Yeah, the middle school and Horizon are currently in yellow.
If those two schools have fewer cases this week, then they will be able to go back down to the green level. But those numbers will not be turned in until the end of the day tomorrow.
So there's a very good chance that the entire district is going to be mask recommended on Wednesday or Thursday of this week, right?
Correct.
Depending on how many cases are turned in tomorrow.
Correct. We have had a lot of activity at the high school today. Not all COVID related. There seems to be a lot of flu cases going around. But we'll continue to monitor that.
I feel like I do need to reiterate, just going through this plan, that if we would happen to have an outbreak, once again, if we would go masks recommended, if there would be an outbreak, we would, per policy EVB, continue to work with our health department to determine if we need to exclude any students at that point.
So we are still taking control. I understand we got the letter from the Attorney General last week, but we are still maintaining control at this point, from what I understand.
Yeah, there are some instances that we're not going to relinquish control. For example, if we find out a student is positive, we're informed a student's positive, they're excluded from the environment for 10 days. If you were a close contact trace, you're a close contact and you have symptoms, well, you're going to be excluded for 10 days. So not totally throwing out all of the mitigations.
And Todd, you shared that a lot of the schools and the districts are, I mean, like in the Northland and other schools are doing this. It's just not that we think we know, I guess. It's just not us making this decision right now.
No. This is a common approach right now in the Northland. And I'm not so much concerned about that, but what I think is best for our community and for our students, but it is not a thought in isolation.
I guess my problem with what happened last week was, I just wanted to get through the little kids, the 5 through 12-year-olds. Sorry, Lynn, your cat is distracting. And I wanted them to have the chance to get vaccinated in order before I remove the mask. So I was actually feeling comfortable with removing mask in January anyway. So whether or not the Attorney General sent the letter last week, I probably would have moved forward with removing mask as a requirement anyway. So that's kind of what irritated me last week. But the little kids, I really wanted them to have the opportunity to get vaccinated first.
I agree, Sarah.
Any other comments or questions? Jeff, do you have something?
No, I'm ready to make the motion to adopt the recommendation of the administration.
Second.
Okay. Well, we've got a motion to adopt the recommendation of the administration and a second. And that recommendation would be effective upon the return from the holiday break on January 4th, or essentially December 17th at the end of the school day, depending on how you want to look at it. Any further discussion on that motion or second?
Who was the second, Denny?
Ian.
Ian was.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further discussion at this time, we do have ESB open. Please vote. Okay, I was also asked to read the results of the vote, but since this is a unanimous vote, I do not need to do that. This motion passes unanimously. We will accept the recommendation of the administration to start the new return to school plan effective the return from the holiday break on January 4th. Any further discussion? Dr. Schutz, do you have anything before we adjourn?
No, I just thank the board for coming together here for an additional meeting. I know it was a challenge to bring all of you together on such short notice. These kinds of decisions, can't be made abruptly or on a dime. And but you all were able to get together with your schedules. And I know some of you are missing some very important events in your families' lives to be a part of this. And as volunteers, I very, very much appreciate that effort.
Does anybody have anything else before we adjourn? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion in a second to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Got Ian and Lynn. Karen, motion in a second. If you would, please vote to adjourn on ESB. We are adjourned. We'll see you guys Wednesday night.